Today, we're departing the allocated expensive side of bourbon and digging deep into something extra cheap. Today, we're tasting and reviewing Jim Beam Devil's Cut. Welcome to ADHD Whiskey. If you're new to the channel, my name is Matt. Jim Beam Devil's Cut can be found in many stores across the country for around 25 bucks. It's got a screw top, America, so you know it's good. Jim Beam Devil's Cut is one of the many expressions of the Jim Beam line. There's Devil's Cut, there's Repeal Batch, there's Double Oaked, there's Extra Aged, which is now 7-year. There's the original Jim Beam White Label, which is like the world's best-selling bourbon. And if it were a crime to overlook that line of Jim Beam bottlings, then I would be found super guilty. I have just never thought much of them or have thought even enough to taste them to see if I enjoyed them until recently I picked up Jim Beam Devil's Cut. What makes Devil's Cut different than the regular Jim Beam profile? Great question. Glad you asked. It says right here on the neck tag, extracted from the barrel walls. Extracted. Jim Beam Devil's Cut Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey made with bourbon extracted from the barrel walls. It's got James B. Beam's signature on it, so you know he was there to sign it. This particular offering, 45% ABV, 90 proof. Quality genuine Beam bourbon, extra aged. Extra aged in the heart of Kentucky, Jim Beam Devil's Cut Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is made for those who take their whiskey seriously. And I didn't know that. I take my whiskey seriously, and I had no idea that this was made for me. I did not know. I didn't know. Time-honored family recipe since 1795. Flipping it, while bourbon ages and the angel's share evaporates, some also remains trapped inside the barrel. This is the Devil's Cut. We extract this dark and intense liquid from our charred white oak barrel walls and blend it with extra aged bourbon. Jim Beam Devil's Cut is a distillery bold bourbon full of rich, intense flavors. I don't know if they've ever gone into detail about the process of how they extract the bourbon from the walls of their barrels, but I would love to find out how they do that. How do they extract the bourbon that's been absorbed by the wood? And if that is actually a thing, if that is actually something that they are doing and it's just not a gimmick or like a, oh, we're doing this, but they're not actually doing it. If they are actually doing it, I wonder if other places could do it or should do it, or if, I don't know. Maybe they take like a SpaceX sized shop vac and like plug it into the head of the barrel and duct tape it, you know, around the seal, like that one submarine that saw the Titanic. RIP. And then just get the barrel hot and cold after it's dumped and just crank that shop vac. Just, I wonder if that's how they do it. That's how I would do it. The devil's in the details apparently, and they didn't share those on the label. I'm gonna have to Google it though. How does Jim Beam Devil's Cut extract the bourbon from the walls of the barrels? They dump the barrels of extra aged Jim Beam, so like the Jim Beam Black Label. Then they agitate the barrels to pull bourbon and flavors from the wood. My mother-in-law should work for Jim Beam, especially on the Devil's Cut team. She would agitate the shit out of those barrels. Just da 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 da. Jim Beam Devil's Cut. Huh. The nose, wow, okay. It smells like the rind of a fruit, like a watermelon rind or like a cantaloupe. Like if you took the fruit off of the rind or whatever it's called. The more I say rind, the more I think that rind is not a word. It just sounds weird right now. Take the fruit off the rind, then, yeah. The first pour of this, the very first pour of this, I nosed it and I was like, good grief, that smells amazing. What was I smelling on that day? Because today is different. Yeah, like a rind of a fruit, a little bit of sour wood, a little bit of toffee, a stretched sour toffee, some caramels, some sugars. I will say this, the reason that I decided to review this bottle is because I thought that it was much better than I thought it was gonna be. But then I'm smelling it right now and I'm like, what was that? idea. Because although the nose doesn't smell much like an ordinary Jim Beam nutty product, it's not doing the things to my senses that it did the other day. It is interesting though. All right, let's go for a sip. Jim Beam Devil's Cut down the hatch. That's pretty damn good. Yeah, for a 90 proof, $25 bourbon, it's got this extra bit of like spice and kick and like oiliness to it that you wouldn't expect. It's actually a nicely layered bourbon for the price. It seems to hit the front of the palate and then work its way to the mid palate and gets deeper, and then to the back of the palate and gets deeper, like a tidal wave of bourbon flooding my taste buds. And none of them evacuated, so son of a bitch. It's got this caramel. It also has this kind of sharp, bright raspberry to it. The nuttiness from the Jim Beam is definitely influencing the palate. It is there. It is kind of like macro-made inside of it, like sewn in. You know, it's sewn into the genetic profile of the bourbon, but it's not the dominant gene, you know what I mean? It's not like standing out. It's not necessarily aggressive with the nuttiness, but I would say more like assertive. It's an assertive nuttiness. Some of that melon rind kind of touches the back corners of your mouth and develops a bit of a sweetness there where you're like, what is that? What is that? Is that a muskmelon? Is that a muskmelon? For a $25 bottle, I think Jim Beam's Devil's Cut is damn good. If you do not hate a nutty profile and you're looking for maybe a cheaper everyday sipper than what you are drinking now, Devil's Cut probably should be at least explored by you because it might extract happiness from your bourbon walls. I don't know. That's gonna do it. My legs are asleep on the stool. Jim Beam Devil's Cut receives a score from me today of 7.4. 7.4 Jim Beam Devil's Cut. It is strongly good. Strongly good. My name is Matt. This is ADHD Whiskey. Like I always say, keep your head in the clouds, but your mind. I'm making some sort of a meal plan. Honestly, I'm so sick and tired of never knowing what we're gonna have for dinner and it being a whole thing every single day. Every day. I know that as soon as I stop recording this video, I'm gonna burst through the garage door into the house and there's gonna be 3 females looking at me like, I don't know what we're gonna have, but I should probably get to thinking about it. And while I'm thinking about tonight, maybe I'll put some extra effort into it and think about tomorrow too. Because I'm just a dad and a husband and that's what we do.